I'm excited to talk about the harvest with that cutie, the master. Great granddaddy. And the angel beast. Always the angel beast. I can't wait till Angelus comes back. But no spoilers. Hello, hello. I'm Juliet. Psst. We're going to sleep. Want to come?
We're back.
Right. We are back. Yay. So should I tell you a little bit of behind the scenes info?
Yeah, that's a good way to start.
So when we would wrap on set, the cast and crew would gather at my house to watch the episodes live. And I think it was on Mondays and then later on Tuesdays when the show aired.
Mm-hmm.
And we would watch each episode together. And we'd come back here after often, 16, 17-hour days. We'd order Indian food. For some reason, it was always Indian food, and watch the show. And James and I would go to watch the dailies together. Dailies or rushes is what the footage that you shot that day, or when we would watch it, we basically watch at the end of each episode. So we watch all the raw, uncut, not color corrected footage to see if we wanted to make adjustments between that end of that episode and the next episode to see what we thought was working, if there was anything we wanted to tweak. And so we'd always go together, watch the episodes. And by the way, it got the name Rushes. Do you guys know why rushes are called rushes?
I don't know why they're called rushes. I don't actually know that.
So it's because the reels of film, at that point it was film, had to be developed in a rush. So that, the director, the cinematographer, the producer, the editor could, view, and it was rush processing. So that's why it was called rushes. And then obviously dailies is because it was the footage from each day.
Right.
So none of us had seen the fully locked cut episode. We hadn't seen anything cut. We'd just seen the raw footage every time, and we would watch it live, which was a lot of fun. I remember the season 2 that there was a couple new composers that came on, and they would come. And at that point, season 1 and 2 was shot on 16 millimeter. And then later it was 35. And then when James and I would go in to watch the dailies, it would be in the edit suite, and they would give us VHS copies of the final locked prior episode to take with us. And they had this sticker with the mutant enemy.
Grr, arg.
Exactly, with the mutant enemy logo. Very handmade, very inside copies. And I actually still have them all in a big drawer. I was going to get rid of them, and then my husband, Dad, said, "No, you can't get rid of these. These are really, really collectible." I just thought, well, we don't have a VCR, we're not going to watch them. And he said, no, you've got to hang on to them. So
talk about somebody's trash being another person's treasure. I mean, that's literally the epitome of that.
There's also something very charming about like leaving somewhere, like holding something. Like you don't do that anymore. Like if you finish like filming anything, it's like, I'll just email you the footage. It's like, I'm leaving here with something. Like this is something tangible that I can hold, that I can walk away with.
I agree. And there is something that's like, oh, look, this is our episode, and it's really cool. And you have it in your hands. And this episode, The Harvest, was directed by John Kretschmer, who also directed School Hard, which was mine and James's first introductory episode.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Now, getting back to you guys watching dailies, was that usual for like actors to be allowed for that? Because that's usually, again, for like, like the department heads and stuff like that to go over. Like, how did you guys like get into those?
It's not usual, but we asked and we were allowed to do it. And James and I really, because both of us have a really strong theater background. What happened is when I was cast and paired with the final choices, and once James was cast, we would get together and rehearse. And so we asked, could we come to the dailies and watch, and we didn't really want to watch them during each episode. We just wanted to watch afterwards and get a sense of like, okay, is there anything after this in the next episode that we want to keep or lose or what to do? And we were very almost clinical of watching it in terms of for what would be useful, instead of being critical or judgmental. It was really like, is this working? Is that working? What would we maybe want to adjust or enhance?
Yeah, I can't have that objectivity watching myself. Like, that's amazing that you
I'm
can
just
do
nauseous.
That. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
I don't really like watching myself either. So I usually will watch something once or in the process like that for the work process. And then I'm good. Like, I don't need to, I don't need to do a lot more of that.
Yeah, I got to depersonalize like all over the place watching myself.
It's funny, when I was directing A Place Among the Dead, I literally would be like she when I'm on screen. It's almost like it just is this other person than me. Like, she's moving. I think, what if we have her do this and this and this? Or I liked that other take. But I think you need that objectivity to some degree to be able to do both. I mean, you guys have done it. So I don't know. Do you have that?
I'm like usually just yelling at myself, like, turn your head left, asshole. I can't match the next cut. I can't.
It's just profanity laden.
Oh yeah, it's just
self-deprecating.
Oh, it's awful.
It's just terrible.
I don't have
it again. You're doing it again.
Turn your head.
Yeah.
I know it is funny when you're watching stuff and you're like, why don't we have this?
You're playing Monday morning quarterback on yourself, which is an interesting thing that a lot of people don't get to do.
Yeah, not the most pleasant thing to do.
No. It's like, all right, let's go back to work, which is an introspective nightmare that I've unfolded for myself.
That's how you breathe?
That's how you breathe? Oh, my breathing. I didn't realize like how bad my breathing was. Just like, it's like I'm not talking and you just hear my mic.
Yeah. Just suffocating. You're not breathing, you're suffocating.
Yeah, it's not good.
Well, you want to know something funny? I actually learned that I have a very loud heartbeat. For women and probably for men too, but very often the little sound mic is put in between your cleavage. Often you go onto a set, you meet someone right away, the sound person there, you're just like, okay, just go on in there, do whatever you need to do.
Get friendly.
It's nice to meet you. What's your name? It's fine. Just go on in there and do. And, but what I found is I actually have to put it farther to the right away from my heartbeat because I have a very healthy, strong, loud heartbeat that picks up on mics. It's funny. I learned the hard way where that sound person's like, oh my God, your heartbeat is so loud. And so I always tell them for years and they move it over, which helps.
My heartbeat probably sounds like somebody unclogging a toilet.
Yeah, mine's, they wouldn't have said, oh, your heartbeat sounds healthy.
It's like, you should go to emergency room.
Called an ambulance.
How are you standing?
You want to lay down, sir?
Let alone acting.
Right. I'm picking up all kinds of nonsense on this.
I'm no doctor.
Can someone tell that guy to stop coughing? Although that's his heartbeat.
Oh my gosh.
Oh.
So, do you want to do the synopsis for The Harvest?
Sure. The Harvest. It's a continuation of the pilot episode. In this episode, Buffy and her friends face their first major threat from the vampire world in an attempt to prevent the Master from breaking free of his mystical prison.
One thing I wanted to say is that we discussed last time that it was Nerf Herder, and I was told that they came back for season, it was either 2 or 3, to re-record the title sequence again, because when they first recorded it, they did it really quickly. They had a very quick session, and it actually always was slightly offbeat at a certain section of the titles. And so they redid it and came in and recorded later and replaced it after season 1.
Yeah, because you see the arrangement gets heavier as like the series wears on.
Well, I also think that the music gets interesting because, like the opening with Darla of the other episode, it really subverts what you think of for horror because it starts gothic. It has those horror chords and then it changes to the rock theme, and it really sets the tone of the show. Buffy herself subverts expectations, and she isn't what you think she's going to be. And so I think the music cues you into that right from the get-go.
Yeah, it really exemplifies the tone of the show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's a jiving tune. That song gets you pumped. There's a thing I call the jot jot ja, which is a reference to the Shield.
Oh,
Because
right.
the Shield, when it does its cold open, always ended on a good button to get you into the theme song, which was and that gets you pumped.
Now,
So, like,
when you binge something, do you skip
no,
the intro? You don't use. I don't either. My wife does it, and I
no,
think there's something very strange about that.
It's very ritualized.
I said you have to. The theme amps you up for each episode.
yep.
Even if I'm watching 11 in a row, I still need that amping.
It's funny because soon we will be going to San Diego Comic-Con, and I was there one year, and Dev and I were in our hotel room, and we heard, well, I thought I was hallucinating because there was a party outside and the Buffy theme was on a loop. But I thought at first, I said, Dev, am I hearing things or is that the Buffy theme? And he said, no, you're not hearing it unless we're both hearing it.
It's happening again.
It's happening. Exactly. But it was on a loop. Like it played, I would say, I don't know. And it wasn't a Buffy themed thing. It wasn't a Buffy event. It just was played, I would say like 25 times on a loop. So it was after around the 5th time I said, wait, I think I'm hearing things. I think I'm hearing the Buffy theme. I don't know what's going on.
That would freak me out.
And this episode, it picks up in the graveyard. The crypt itself, the interior of the crypt was built, but the graveyard itself, that was when it was shot at the live graveyard before it was built in the parking lot of the Stewart Street sound stages and warehouses, which is when in season 2, that's when the graveyard was built there.
Now I'm like watching it with a technical eye. It's like, this has got to be a set because just the way the lighting is, it's like, you can't do that in a live crypt. And it's just like space issues and whatnot. It's like, yeah, most crypts aren't very spacious.
Spacious, right.
Yeah.
And I think
don't ask me how I know that.
Have you been in many?
I know.
I think the cemetery is called Angelus Rosdale, which is funny. Angelus, right?
Yeah, really. That's kind of on the nose.
But I think for me, this episode, one of the things that's so great about is I feel like the first episode, I know we talked a little about that last time, introduces us to Buffy, and you see how she has the weight of the world on her shoulders and how she's alone in this plight. Nick's character and Allison's character over here, and they start to get a little bit pulled into the fold, but really it's sort of, she's on this warrior solo journey. And I feel like this episode is really about the group coming together. They're becoming a team, as well as also keying us into the master's overall plan.
Right.
The first episode was basically to establish the premise. This episode really feels like this is where everybody's slotting into their roles that they're going to be playing from here on out. Giles is going to be there to like give key information.
What do they say? Basil Exposition?
Hello, Austin. I'm Basil Exposition with British Intelligence. We have just received word that Dr. Evil is planning a trap for you tonight at the Electric Psychedelic Pussycat Swingers Club here in swinging London.
Basil Exposition. Yes. He's Basil Exposition.
He is. And also in this episode, Tony's less animated than he was in episode 1. Like he's sort of settled into the Giles that we know more so, I would say. It's sort of interesting. Just his timbre is a little bit different than episode 1.
Yeah.
Did you guys know that Darla was originally supposed to die at the end of this episode?
Yes.
Oh, no, I did not know that.
Yeah, she was supposed to go, but they realized that she was such a rich character, they wanted to keep her around.
This is what's great about the show. It's what Alton Brown calls, if you ever watch the Food Network, he likes things in the kitchen that are multitaskers. And that's like things that you get a lot of utility out of, like things that they're not necessarily designed for. And that's what good writing is too. It's like, okay, we have these pieces. Instead of like starting fresh with a new piece, like why don't we bring this old piece back and see what we could do with it? Like, let's develop these characters. Like these characters that on the surface, like, you know, in the beginning, it's just like, oh, I have them figured out. Or they're there to fulfill a very specific role. Like Darla is there to be like hench number 2.
Well, she was vampire number 1 until...
Oh, vampire, right, exactly.
Right, yeah.
That's what's great about the creative aspect of the show is that it's like, no, what can we do with that? Look at the rich lore that Darla has by the end of her run on Angel.
Oh,
it's
the
amazing.
whole arc. Yeah, the arc of her character. And this episode really establishes Willow as the tech whiz.
Yes.
All the city plans are just open to the public.
I sort of stumbled onto them.
when I accidentally decrypted the city council's security system.
And with the library scene, I love nothing more than a lore dump. And you get that in spades in this episode. Giles gives you every ounce of information that you need to know about this world in this episode.
Yeah, the mythology. It's very Lovecrafty with old gods and stuff like that.
It's fantastic.
David Greenwalt coined the word phlebotinum for the mystical thing needed in the episode, the exposition of each episode that was often told by Giles. And so in the writer's room, when they would be talking, they'd be like, okay, it's time for the phlebotinum. The other thing that the flutie scene, I think the Ken Lerner scene is really funny with the stunt where she jumps over the fence.
Yeah, she bionic woman's over the fence.
Yeah, it's a really cool shot. And apparently it was originally a different stunt, but this was a much less expensive way of communicating the same thing. And it works. It's really awesome.
It's kind of like a modified Texas switch they do. Anybody know the Texas switch?
Nope. No.
Oh.
That's why it got quiet.
It was dead silent.
I was like, wait, Texas switch.
I was thinking, am I supposed to know this?
Me too.
It's a stunt term where, like, let's say somebody falls behind an obstruction. That'll be the stunt person, but the actor gets up. Like the star will get up.
Okay,
the stunt person. It's sort of like a Texas switch. Yeah, that's what they call that. Again, you guys got to watch Hooper.
Hooper, the newest movie from the team that brought you Smokey and the Bandit.
The hallway scene with Xander and Willow, where they're worried about Buffy and where it's sort of like we have something that we're keeping from everybody else.
They have dual lives now. It's like, wait a minute, this isn't the same as yesterday. This is a totally different life that I'm about to live.
Yeah.
That was actually added later while episode 12 was being shot because the harvest came in short. So there's a number of episodes that were shot later and then edited into the episode, which I can point out as we go along as well, because I know them.
The idea of like packing 42 minutes or 45 maybe at this time, it's more art than science. You know what I mean? It's not easy to like get that actual, because it's a very specific runtime. You have to hit that number. Like you have to hit that. One scene's not working and it goes, and then you got to like, okay, we got to fill it out with something else. Okay, what do we do? It's just like it's got to be that length.
Yeah.
You know what I noticed this time watching it? Now that I'm a professional podcaster and stuff, I have like a really heavy sound library, and it's like it's funny when I hear a Foley effect that it's like I have that, and so like when Jesse is revealed to be a vampire, it's played with this sound effect. Oh, and Darla's scream at the end.
That's scream. Yeah, that's a classic. I was like, it's not a Wilhelm. It's not a Howie. What the hell's the name of that scream?
I could pull it up right now.
Yeah, you got to play it for us now. We got to hear these.
Here's that scream.
David and Nick hadn't worked very much before Buffy, but Sarah, Allison, and Tony had worked a lot because both Sarah and Allison were kid actors.
I go to Burger King.
Burger King.
Burger
King. It's just so adorable. But yeah, so she'd already been working for almost decades by then.
And this is the best, is that, and I brought up last week, Allison Hannigan was on the show, Free Spirit, and I sent you a link, you guys, after we recorded to the opening credits. And of course, Juliet's like, oh, I know these guys, like Corinne Bohrer, because I said by accident Christine Bohrer, but it's Corinne Bohrer. She's like, oh, I know Corinne. And it's just like, oh, and the lead, Frank. I'm like, of course she knows them.
It was so crazy because I went Corinne, and then I said, oh my God, Frank, we were in acting class together.
That's so bizarre.
And I actually went to a taping of that show. And
oh my God.
Yes. And Frank, and it was funny because Frank, we were doing scene work together and we'd been in class for actually a couple
clarify,
years.
Not me, Frank, who was the lead.
Lutz.
Yeah. Frank Lutz, who was the lead on Free Spirit. Yeah.
Yes. My previous Frank, not my Scoobie Frank. And it was funny because I ended up doing a play in Orange County, which was Murray Shiskel, who was the writer of a play called Love, and he was a co-writer of the Dustin Hoffman movie Tootsie.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Murray was amazing. And I had been doing a Murray Shiskel play called The Pushcart Peddlers, and the director of this new Murray Shiskel play saw me in it and said, oh, can you come and audition for Murray? It's a musical, and he wants to develop it here and then see about taking it to Broadway. And so I said, sure. And I auditioned for it. It was funny because I read, and when Murray Shiskel like jumped up on stage, hugged me and said, this is amazing. You have the part. And I actually called my mom from the audition, said I got the part. And she said, oh, honey, they don't tell you there. You must have misunderstood. You didn't get the role. Like you must have gotten that completely wrong. And she said, what exactly did Murray say? And I said, well, he jumped on stage, he hugged me, and he said, you have the part. And she said, oh, well, wait, maybe you do have the part. And I said, no, I think I really do have the role. But anyway, so I ended up doing this play.
Way to kill the vibe.
I know. Well, that's my mom. And so I ended up doing the musical, and it was 8 shows a week. And I had to drive. It was about depending on Los Angeles traffic, it could be really stressful to try to get there for the half-hour call, right, curtain. So I would always make it, but it was really nerve-wracking. But so Frank came out to see the show. And then he had a Fiat Spider that wouldn't start after the show. And so I said, okay, well, I can drive it's really late now. It's like 11, whatever. I can drive you back to Hollywood and you can come back with me before the show tomorrow and you can then get AAA and work all that out. And he says, like, great. So the only thing is I do my vocal exercises on the way to the theater every day. And it's like, so I'm ready for the musical. And I actually do vocalize 5 days a week still. Like I just do these vocal exercises.
Bumblebee, stuff like that.
Well, really to sort of place my voice in a nicer sort of register and all that. So, because I don't sing as much as I used to. So he said, okay, sure. And then he told me he secretly thought, okay, well, she probably will blow off her vocal exercises and just like hang out and talk with me. But I'm so disciplined. Like I was a ballerina. And I was like, this is my time to do my vocal exercise. So I vocalized the entire way there, which is actually really hard when you're in a closed car with how loud it can get. But I had warned him. But it was funny because afterwards he said, oh my God, I'm so impressed. Like I would have totally blown it off and just like hung out and had fun. And I was like, but I have to be ready for the show. And so I feel so bad because to this day, I subjected Frank Luz to 45 minutes to an hour of umming and awing, as Dev calls it.
I once worked with Mark Margolis. Actually, I worked with him a couple times. Do you happen to know Mark? Yeah.
I don't know him personally, but I know who he is.
Never mind the wisecracks, Ventura. You owe me rent.
Mr. Chickadance, I told you, you're my first priority.
He did this funny thing. We were shooting overnights, and he does this thing just to keep his voice going. Really sweet guy, by the way. He was a real, just great guy. And the shoot we were on was a disaster, just a nightmare. And don't get me started. But it was very tense on the set. But he just kept doing this thing. Periodically, you could set your watch to it, like every 10 seconds. Just to keep.
Oh my gosh.
And this was like a very bad set. And it would just be funny where people are screaming at each other. Like it was like really, really toxic, this set. It'd just be like, all right, get the shot already. Jesus Christ. You just hear that in the background. And it made it perfect comedy.
It's poetic almost.
It was beautiful. It was amazing. Yeah.
Oh my God, that all sounds really bizarre.
Back to Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Oh, wait. So 2 questions. One is, was it literally like, like why did he?
That was his thing. He said he was like to keep his vocal cords active.
But it wasn't like, It was like,
No, literally,
like Pee Wee Herman voice.
Yeah, like I'm doing the best Mark Margolis impression anybody's ever done. Just FYI.
Or the Kermit the Frog.
Yeah, it's very Kermit the Frog. Like if you like tapped Kermit the Frog in the back while he wasn't aware of it, that's the sound he would make.
Wait, I have a funny story that Gary Oldman told us about being directed. So let me see if I can remember this right. But he said basically this director came out and said, okay, so I want you to walk out. Step, step, step. Verbals, verbals, verbals. Daggers, daggers, daggers. Step, step, step. Verbals, daggers, 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 daggers. Step, step, step. And he was like, what is that? And he's going, okay, I guess he means I'm moving on the step, step, step. I'm giving looks on the daggers, and then we're doing the verbals. But that was the guy's direction.
He probably has that shorthand with somebody else and forgot. that
no one else knows what I'm talking about.
This is a new professional relationship, and you haven't established that kind of shorthand with him yet.
Right. What does that mean? And he did this Drusilla be in my eyes thing with the daggers. So he was going between his eyes and Gary's eyes. Like I was gesturing, but of course you guys can't see. Going to his eyes, the other eyes, daggers. That's what he was saying. So yeah, maybe that's right. He had shorthand with someone else, and he just picked up with Gary.
Like, yeah, you'll get it. Oh.
So in the Buffy episode, by the way, I think that the scene with Angel was David's. He told me that was his audition scene, even though it's the second script that both scripts were completed. And that was the scene that he read for his audition. And the other thing is that the tunnel scenes were shot on location, and it was this unbelievable location that had massive tunnels underground, this huge system of tunnels.
Like, that's interesting, because is it possible that the room that they get stuck in, where it's like not escape, is that a set? Because the geography is very specific. Unless they scouted it, and because I'm saying, like the way the placement of the vent shaft she goes to, that had to be in the script in order to, like, oh, there's a vent shaft on the ceiling, and it's just like, I guess they just found that location. Because I was watching it thinking, like, this must be a set because it's so specific, the geography.
I do know that they often did, if it was on location, did a lot of the location scouting, and then some of the blocking would come out of that. And so things would be staged directly related to what the location was going to be.
I love the scene in the computer class.
Oh my gosh. I was about to say that, and I was like, oh, it's
I almost cut you all off and just said, deliver.
Okay, so how do we save it?
Deliver.
Deliver? Where's that?
But my favorite is that one dude where, what a busybody he is.
Right.
Where that one dude, like where Cordelia and Harmony are trash talking Buffy. This dude comes onto frame like a Muppet. It's like, what you guys talking about? Like, what a busybody this guy is. We never seen him before, and I don't think we see him again, but he needed to know the hot goss. But it was funny, that scene, and just those computers with the DOS prompts and stuff, like, that takes me back. It's like, oh.
The old school computer.
I love it.
But it's also so great when she does that with Cordelia, because she's been acting so bitchy, and you're just like, go Willow.
Yeah.
Because she's also beginning her character arc to get more self-assurance from hanging out with Buffy and from surviving almost having gotten killed. There's changes are already brewing inside her character. This was also Harmony's first episode.
Oh, that's right. She didn't show up last episode. That's right.
No. And Mercedes was also a kid actress. She was in movies like Addams Family Values.
Is this made from real lemons? Yes. I only like all natural fruits and beverages, organically grown, with no preservatives. Well, I'll tell you what. I'll buy a cup if you buy a box of my delicious Girl Scout cookies. Do we have a deal? Are they made from real Girl Scouts?
And she just told me that she was emancipated at a really young age. Emancipated meaning that she made decisions without parental consent.
Oh, wow. If we ever have her on, let's see if she wants to talk about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That whole location where you're talking about where Jesse, I think that whole sequence is so scary when the other vamps are lurking, and the way that the tension is built in that whole thing, and him being revealed as a vampire. That whole sequence is really effective. And then, of course, that hand around the door that becomes immortalized, pun intended, in the opening title sequence.
Yeah, that's my favorite part of the show. That carries over through, like, the whole series. Like, okay, what stuff's going to make it into the opening credit sequence? And where is it?
By the way, that whole part where they're crawling through the vent, where Sarah and Nick are on their hands and knees crawling, John Kretschmer, the director, had the camera on a skateboard for that sequence.
Oh, wow.
Wow. I love hearing stuff like that.
Oh, but Jesse.
Yeah,
the whole bait and switch with Jesse, where, they build up his whole thing that he's going to be the bait. And it's like, oh, no, they turned him. And it's like, wow. Like, that whole moment, it's like, and then that answers the question in the first episode where we were talking about, like, oh, is this guy a main character? We don't know who he is yet. This, that, and the other thing. We're still getting to know these characters on the first time viewing of the show. You don't know who he is. You don't know that he's portrayed as having a major part in the show.
And it gives you it gives Xander the believable motivation,
right?
To, like, okay, that's my buddy. Like, now it's like he has a stake in it. Excuse the pun. Hey,
it's personal. Hey. So the other thing that I wanted to talk about is that the vampire teeth could get quite lispy. And so you'll often notice like some of the things where people are working with them where that can be a bit tricky. But so I asked Todd McIntosh if I could take home a pair of the teeth to work with them because I felt like it wouldn't be very daunting if Drusilla was saying things like this. And so, and I was when I first put them in because they actually made, unlike the True Blood teeth, although Kristen Bauer and I have shared teeth stories and she had trouble with those, but they were actually much thinner. Ours actually, they took a whole, like when you go to the dentist and you do those
impression.
Yes, thank you. Impressions. And so it was the whole teeth. It wasn't just the vampire teeth. It was everything. It was quite bulky. But so I was at home and I was working with them and getting comfortable with them. And it was 2 a.m. And I thought we live in the Hollywood Hills and I didn't want to leave the garbage inside because, you know, you can get a lot of animals coming in. And I thought, okay, it's, you know, I don't need to take the teeth out to go down and out to the street and take the garbage. Who's going to be out at 2 a.m? Doesn't matter. So I start down the stairs and I'm at the trash bin and I'm putting the garbage in. And all of a sudden I hear, oh, hi, I'm new. I just moved in. You must, you know, I'm your new neighbor.
No.
And I was completely freaked out because I didn't know what to do. I thought, okay, if I talk, she's just going to scream or think I'm really like a scary person or what. So I put the trash and I held my, you know, my hand up to my mouth and was, oh, it's really, really nice to meet you. And I was talking really quickly and I left. And then I could see that she thought I was really weird because she'd been super friendly and I was holding my hands up. And yeah, exactly. Talking like that.
Of course.
And the next time I saw her, I apologized and said, I'm sorry, I'm on a show right now. And she knew Buffy and she said, oh my God, I love that show. I said, I actually had vampire teeth in and I just didn't want to scare the bejesus out of you in the middle of, you know, 2 a.m. in the dark night. And she said, oh, I'm so glad. I would have probably screamed at the top of my lungs. And so that
Are
was
you upset that you didn't just turn around and go at her and just
immediately? That was my immediate first reaction.
It's like, well, how many times am I going to have the opportunity to do this?
I might as well, right? Might as well.
And then you called Frank Lutz up and said, let's do some vocal exercises with these in my mouth. But why do you always call me when this is stuff?
While you're working on this stuff. But then it's funny because I had another strange encounter at the trash bins that also involves vampires. I was pulling up to the house and I saw this guy who was walking his dog and starting to put some of the dog poop in our bin. So I rolled down the window and I said, you know, is there any way you could make sure that's wrapped properly? Because otherwise it makes our garbage bins, people put it in, it's really, really rank. And so it'd be really nice if you could just wrap. And as I'm in the middle of sort of this litany of poop talk, the gentleman turns around and it's Michael McMillan, who played the televangelist Steve Newland on True Blood.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
And he's looking at me, I'm looking at him, and he goes, oh, hi. And I go, hi. And we have this moment of recognition, having been on vampire shows and whatever. And I'm thinking, oh, you know, he would be good for one of my projects we're working on. Would that be okay right now, or would it be weird to talk to him about that? We're just like talking about his dog poop. Yeah, I think it's probably not appropriate.
That's a weird time. That's a tough transition to pull off.
It was really bizarre that we've actually, of course, seen each other since many times, and that it was much more normal and not weird. But yeah, I sort of left it and was like, okay. And he's like, oh yeah, I'll definitely make sure this is wrapped up. I'm like, that's fine. It's okay. It's nice to see you. Nice to meet you. The other weird thing in our neighborhood is one night there was a cat that had gotten run over and was badly hurt. And so we called and we were trying to figure out if it was the cat had a collar. So we were trying to figure out who it belonged to. And so we're going kind of walking around. It's night. This car pulls up and gal gets out and it turned out it was Lucy Liu. And we're like, do you have a cat? And she's like, I don't have a cat. And so we told her what happened. And then she came and looked at the cat and we were like, do you know any? And so then she joined us and we were on this whole like escapade to try to find the cat owner for the cat that was injured. And then we never found the cat, but they did come and take the cat. And the cat was okay, but it was like this whole long, weird, surreal. I felt like I was in After Hours.
Like a fever dream.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. It's just like, it's like when this kind of things happen to me, I don't have celebrity guest appearances. It's like, oh, look, it's Lou Ferrigno. I found this lost dog.
It's like a Gilligan's Island episode.
Well, you go into people's houses and just be like, now's a good time for the teeth, I think. I have a problem with the master's managerial style. He doesn't dole out punishments equally. So like that one.
You mean when he does the eye? Like
he Lucio Fulci's that one guy's eye for like just for an easily understandable error.
Colin, you failed me. I'm sorry. There. That wasn't so bad, was it? Oh, hold on.
Like, it's like, listen, it's the Slayer. I was by myself. You know, what do you want me to do? But Darla, it goes into his lunch.
He's a good one. His blood is pure.
You've tasted it. You bring me scraps.
Like, imagine you sent out, like, somebody who worked for you for coffee, and they come back, and there's lipstick on the cup. It's like, oh, yeah, I had some, but it's like, I got thirsty on the way over. Hope you don't mind. Like, but he's like, hey, listen, don't do that again. That's not cool. But the one guy's like, hey, the superhero, I let her go. It's like, well, you got to lose an eye for that, pal.
But don't you, having played a villain who's evil, I mean, isn't that part of the thing that makes it so unpredictable is that you never know what's coming your way? You might get your eye out or you might not. Or do you think he just has a scale that isn't very...
You know what? I think it played into it. I think that was the straw that broke the camel's back. And it's like that guy went off like with his wounded eyes. Like, that wasn't even about me, right? That's because of Darla eating his food.
Well, and
like,
also
that's not cool.
Darla's one of his favorites, right?
Right, and she's the most smartly dressed out of the bunch. So you gotta play favorites.
Well, Luke and the Master, that whole ritual scene feels like it's kind of an erotic scene almost between the two of them.
Yeah.
Doesn't it?
Yeah. It's very Anne Ricey. It's very Anne Ricey.
Yeah. And he's bowing down in front of him the whole way it's staged and the whole kind of feel between the two of them and the way that they're playing it. It almost has this kind of romantic and sexual feel as well as the ritual-esque aspect.
And Darla's like complaining like behind the scenes. She's just like, he's such a kiss ass. Isn't he? He's like the biggest kiss ass. You see how he yelled at me about drinking blood? It's just like...
And then they're like, look, at least your eye wasn't poked out.
Yeah, that's on you.
Wait, if the other thing I think is such the quintessential line that Joyce has when she says to Buffy, if you don't go out, it will be the end of the world.
Right.
That's such a perfect summation of the metaphor of teenage angst. But in this case, it's actually true. It will be the end of the world. And it's such a great microcosm of the show.
Yeah. I really feel for Joyce, especially the older I get. It's just like, she's just trying to, please, could you not? Like when you have a kid who's like giving you trouble, it's just like, could you please? I just had to move. You burned down the school. Like she even says, I've listened to a tape to like be more assertive. Like she's just doing her best, the poor woman.
It's also that thing of that adults really can't understand teenagers. Teenagers, from the adult perspective, teenagers are out of their minds. And from the teenage perspective, the emotions are so histrionic and so everything is life or death. So it's that sort of place where there is no meeting of the minds to a certain degree. No. In that scene with Joyce it's in Buffy's trunk. It's like there's two levels. The underneath level is the something that we can't tell everyone, the stuff that's hidden. And that's symbolic.
Oh yeah. That's where like in real terms, that's where I hid my cigarettes. I had a trunk like that, not like that, but I had like a layer where my illicit stuff was mostly cigarettes. I was a good boy otherwise.
Do you smoke?
No.
But you did.
I did, yeah. When I was a teenager, I only smoked I was really into it from like 15 to 18. And then it was just like, it would
come and go. Yeah, same.
I smoked in 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th grade and then never again.
Wow, you just wanted to get it out of the way.
Yeah, just one and done. That's good though, because it's healthy tissue at that point. It bounces right back.
It's resilient. You're resilient at that age. Yeah. You could put a bunch of stuff in you.
Your lungs are pink within back to me. I was living in London and we could take the tube and we would just basically take the smoking car, which thank goodness there aren't anymore. And so if anybody said, "Oh, you smell like cigarettes," you'd just say, "Oh, I was on the tube," and we would get Marlboro cigarettes. For some reason, we like the American cigarettes. and we would smoke those. Yeah, but we were little. Like, I can't believe
What is
nobody.
third grade? What is third grade again? Like, that's 10?
That's
How old is third grade?
I don't know. It's been so
I don't
long.
know.
I don't know.
It's around
Right. It's around like
8?
10, 11, 12. Like you're around 12, 13, maybe. Like, yes, that's pretty.
Wait, it says
You're an overachiever.
It says it's actually third graders are usually between 8 and 9 years
8
old.
and 9 years old.
So what's weird to me is that nobody on the tube ever told us 8 and 9-year-olds to stop smoking or anything. Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, because I remember being young too, and when my parents in the car, because in Los Angeles, you had to be driven everywhere, and it would just be, they'd both be smoking, and you'd be in this little, are you too young to be on airplanes when there was smoking sections, which basically would be the whole plane? Because it would it'd be one row would be like you'd be sitting right in front of the smoking section, which was, so it meant it just went everywhere.
I remember like in diners and the smoking section was always like the back corner, but there was nothing stopping. It was the whole restaurant's the smoking section.
Yes.
My dad used to just go to the movies and he would smoke. My dad still smoke. My dad's pushing 80. He's still a chain smoker. It's just at this point, let him do it.
Yeah.
It's like, all right. I mean, 78, you're already past the national average, so you might as well keep going.
And he'd do it in movies?
Yeah, and that wasn't uncommon in the 80s. Like it was like not allowed, but everybody kind of did. Like I did it too when I used to go to the movies when I was a teenager. And that was like a thing. Now that's unimaginable. Like, what do you mean? You can't do that.
It's crazy how that shift happened. Because it wasn't that long ago. Like really, if you think about it, and then like the grand scheme of things.
What's wild also for me to think about is that we were kind of left to just at 8 years old, like travel all through the city on our own. But I don't know if kids can just be left alone to do that. I mean, and whether it was safer then or it wasn't safe, it probably wasn't. We just didn't know.
Just did it anyway.
So we were kind of left to our own. As long as you were home by dinner, like nobody cared about where you were.
I was raised like a veal. Like my mother wouldn't let me go anywhere.
I wasn't allowed to go past the fire hydrant. I'd get beat with a broom.
Yeah, you get attacked for that. You got to beat for that.
Yeah, you can't go past the fire hydrant. God forbid.
God forbid. Cross the street.
Cross the street.
The
fire hydrant was on the same block. It was only like 4 houses down.
I still hear the yells and screams in my ears when I cross the street.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know about you kids, but I was smoking at 8.
you were.
Yeah, we wouldn't be allowed to hang out with you.
Yeah.
Actually, I was a bad influence because when I moved back from London, I remember my friends, I was like, what? You've never smoked?
Oh.
And I actually had my friends smoking.
It's like I'm 10.
What's wrong with you people? You haven't smoked. None of us actually ended up being smokers, so maybe we got it out of our system.
Yeah.
But I was the bad influence because I was like, hey, I can get the cigarettes.
Oh, that's so funny.
So the harvest is actually... So essentially the harvest is the master, John Malkovich is his way into Luke, sort of, where anything Luke experiences, the master will experience. So he goes out by proxy to like
he's the vessel.
Yeah, he's the vessel. And this is the first episode we talk about the Hellmouth. It's like the Hellmouth will open, and this is the first like universe-ending crisis that's been averted because that Hellmouth is like everybody's like that's hot property for the demons. They want that Hellmouth. As soon as somebody moves, as soon as the mass is off the deck, somebody's like, I'm gonna move in on that Hellmouth.
Wait, before we go to the end, do you guys know the band at the Bronze this episode?
No, I don't.
No.
It's the Dashboard Prophets. And actually, the scene with Cordy that in the Bronze, that was added later. It's the another of the scenes that was added to the episode because it was running short. I think the slow-mo walk when Julie, Brian, and the other vampire characters go to the Bronze.
Oh, it's great.
That's great.
So great. And
so cool.
To me, it's also scary. Their energy reminds me of the Manson gang coming in or something like that.
Well, there was a couple of like nice scares in this episode when they're navigating those with the tunnels.
Yes.
Their eyes are just glowing behind them as they're in the dark. I said, that's a scary image.
There's that, and there's the most unbelievable thing happens in that scene. It's the way Buffy does not react to a rat crawling on her foot. Because I mean, maybe it's believable for her, but I can't imagine. I'd be turn right back around. Jesse will have to figure this out for himself. Like, that's the deal breaker.
No, I couldn't. I was once staying at a hotel, and a rat, this huge rat came out, and I was up on the bed before I even knew, screaming at the top of my, like, I would not have been able to react that coolly to that.
That's the game for me. I got to say, Luke gives the absolute worst sales pitch to this crowd of people.
Tonight will be history at its end. Yours is a glorious sacrifice. Degradation most holy. What? No volunteers?
I actually loved how he plays this, Brian Thompson, how he's genuinely shocked that nobody bought his pitch. It's like, what? Nobody?
So, yeah, you're saying nobody wants to do it?
Yeah, it's just like he gives this incredibly, like, listen, he put his heart into it. Like, he's been wanting to do this pitch. It's like, he's a company boy. That's why he's the master's favorite. And so he's just like, I got this real great pitch. He goes on stage and no takers on it. It's like, well, obviously.
Surprisingly, there's no takers on it.
I also love Buffy, her swagger in the showdown, the way she takes off her jacket and the way that whole scene plays out. And I know Sarah did quite a bit of the stunts, the close-up stuff she always did, but she, in the first couple seasons, and then Sophia Crawford did the big stunt work. But that whole sequence, the way she kind of throws down is great. I mean, it's got that shot that ends up in the titles, the blue shot of Sarah, that's iconic and powerful. And at that time, a lot of blue gels were used and blue color correction in film and television. Everything looked blue and had that tint. John Kretschmer, the director, was told to do a Spielberg in that scene, and that is how that shot was born.
And then the other vampires, just the best. It's just like, we're out. Nah, they don't want that smoke.
And don't you guys think that Jesse's death is funny? How it's an accident that he gets dusted by getting knocked. It's just such a humorous way for him. He's had this whole buildup, and then it just kind of happens unexpectedly.
And having Xander do it is kind of circle rounds it out.
Well, it is. And it's also like Xander is becoming less like the Jesse character, and he's becoming more active. His character is not sitting on the sidelines and not sort of identifying as the nerd as much, or the outsider, or whatever the words are for that. And he's becoming involved in a different way than he was prior.
Yeah. There's one thing about Xander that I want to run this past you, Juliet. So, because Xander says something when they're talking about where the vampires could be. Xander says something to the effect of, well, there's an underground electrical system that runs through the power station. And that's like, that's very specific information for a teenager to know. But we just got back from the West Coast, or I got back from the West Coast. Chris didn't get to come.
Never gonna live that down.
And there's no. And
that's why I'm coming to everything. And you'll see.
You'll see. You'll see. Oh, you'll see. So, but then I realized something that's a very peculiar thing, and I want to know if I'm correct in this, Juliet. I've noticed something in my trips to LA, that the people in LA really like talking about the experience of living in LA. But
I think you're right. I mean, I think that absolutely there is that. So you're saying that's how Xander is sort of ascribed.
That's why it seems unusual for him to know that. But then I was in LA and I was just like, no, that tracks.
Oh, I was thinking about the fact that in a way, there's almost like three parental males in this episode. There's Giles, who's the wise educator. There's Flutie, who's the oppressive, rule-oriented, passive-aggressive adult. And then there's the master, who's kind of the evil father, the dark side of the psyche. He wants to consume her. He ascribes to the Dracula myth. He's invading and he's taking over, and he's bestial and he's bat-like. And I thought that those three archetypes are an unusual dynamic in the episode.
Giles is the winner. Like, everybody wants a Giles in their life. If I was a teenager, man, I'd be like a captain of industry if I had a Giles in my life at that time.
He gives her information. He trains her. He's on her side. He's a font of knowledge. It'd be amazing to have a Giles, right?
Yeah. That's my favorite relationship dynamic in the show. Some people like, you Buffy Angel, you Buffy Spike, or do you ship
Buffy
this? It's like,
Spike, excuse me.
I'm sorry.
You mean Spike Drusilla? Don't you?
Oh, I sure stepped in with that one. I'm saying other people say that. I'm saying.
Right. This is not our opinion.
This is not our opinion.
The other thing in this episode is that Angel starts to perfect his handsome lurking.
Yeah, this is good handsome lurk.
It was good handsome lurk.
Yeah. It's actually the last of the scenes that was added later because of the episode being short. So it was shot later and added in as well.
And you can see they're still trying to figure out like
it's hinting at something that might not necessarily be completely fleshed out yet, but they know they're going to do something with him.
Yeah, it feels very clear that Buffy and Angel have a chemistry and that's being planted, but who knows exactly where that's going to go.
Oh, boy.
Well, don't you think that the end walk and talk, as we call it, the walk and talk sequence where actors are walking and talking?
What's the guy's name? The showrunner's name that you call it that too?
I mean, Aaron Sorkin?
Aaron Sorkin. It's just like, yeah, you call that like an Aaron Sorkin when you do that. Or it's just like, West Winging it. I forget what show where they say, well, West Winging it. It's like walk and talk.
Yeah. That at the end, it really clearly sets up the thesis for the rest of the show, that it's not only going to be vampires, that it's going to be our team against all of the dark forces.
Yeah, you now have your core four.
Yeah, it sets up like going forward, you're going to get a monster of the week.
Yep.
You're going to get that. And I love that they said it's not just vampires, like, which is such a fun tease.
Yeah.
The other thing is that Willow foreshadows the blowing up of the school at the end with, spoiler alert, but in a kind of throwaway line as they're walking away.
Yeah, she throws that away. And of course, Giles' classic last line.
Yeah, my favorite line of the Earth is Student.
I watch this now. It's like a time capsule. It's just like, oh, wow, that's right. People used to dress like that. Like now it's so different.
That's starting to come back. Like me and my wife were actually walking through the mall the other day. If anyone's been to a mall lately, it's a very depressing place.
Have you gone on YouTube, Dead Malls, like that kind of content? There's a whole subgenre on YouTube.
It's wonderful.
About dead malls because it's they're
I've seen that. It's crazy.
It's crazy. But I need to get a link repaired on my watch, and I was like, I know that the mall has a kiosk. I'll just do that. Let's take the baby and just like walk through the mall. And it is the scariest place on the planet because it's literally just desolate now. But all the clothing on the mannequins is like late 90s, early 2000s, like those big chunky belts that serve no purpose, and it's like all like collared shirts under a long sleeve shirt. It's like, what is happening? We're reverting?
Well, it's a 30-year cycle.
Such an image of that Charlton Heston movie.
Oh, Mega Man?
Yeah. Like the way you described it.
That's exactly what it felt like.
Yeah.
And the most bizarre thing, the mall by me, we walked past the food court, and the food court is normally, it's like you have your chain stuff there. You can always count on like a Burger King and like a Taco Bell in this food court.
You mean Burger King?
I go to Burger King.
In the Ocean County Mall in New Jersey, it's all branded by it's like a guy's name. I can't remember the name of it, but it's like Gary or something. It's like Chinese food, rotisserie, pizza, and it's all just like it reminds me of like it's like Biff Tannen's version. I said this guy monopolized the entire food court. Who is this guy?
Gary, the food court lord.
It was very bizarre.
I started with a hot dog stand. This whole mall, now if you want a spot in the mall, you got to go to me.
Yeah.
It's mine. It's all mine. Well, the thing with the 80s, too, for me, is the 80s was a time of excess, and we've sort of cyclically been in a time of excess as well. So it sort of harkens that the style and all that stuff would sort of come back because we're living in that sort of aesthetic.
Yeah. It's not a guy's name. It's a nickname, Daddy-O. Which is even weirder. And it's Daddy-O's Taco, Daddy-O's Rotisserie, Daddy-O's Grill, and Daddy-O's Pizza. It makes up the entire food court.
What do you mean, Daddy-O?
It's so scary. It's so...
Daddy-O.
I'm going to throw up.
Can we get a hot dog, Daddy-O? That's weird.
It's so strange.
Listen, if they're smart, she just did you. She just gave you an ad.
That should just be echoing through the mall.
That should be, listen.
Daddy-O has the answer for you. Every kind of food you ever want. Daddy-O.
That might bring traffic back to the mall.
Listen, I'm just letting Daddy-O know. That ain't for free.
Right. I need like a taco card or something.
Yeah, that's all I want. I want like a free beverage, but Juliet, she's gotta have to wet a beak on that one.
Yeah, do the right thing, Daddy.
Do the right thing. Come on, Daddy-O.
Yeah, I've got to deal with Daddy-O. Sounds like some porno.
frightening.
Yeah, South Jersey Mall. Have you been?
Where everyone wants to go.
Yeah.
Have you not eaten at Daddy-O's? Oh my gosh. So I had a question for you guys. Last time we were talking about the relatable theme, and you guys actually talked about getting bullied and you made jokes about it, but it sounded pretty intense, actually. It sounded like I was thinking about that. Like it sounded rough.
It wasn't good. It wasn't great. I tend to just push it all down.
Yeah, that's my coping mechanism.
Yeah, just
bottle
push
it
it all
up as much as possible.
Like when I found out I was diabetic, I'm like, oh, that's a
it's
whole
gold mine.
that's a new set.
Yeah, that's 5 more minutes.
It's 5 more minutes.
You weren't thinking that at the doctor.
Oh, I was. When I was doing comedy and I found out I was diabetic, I said, oh, thank you. I'm not anymore, thank God. But I said, you just gave me.
You're not diabetic anymore, or you're not?
Oh, no, I'm not diabetic anymore. No.
Well, you're always technically diabetic. It's
but
just that,
it's in control, right?
Yeah, it's not like I don't have to.
I don't need to take medicine or anything.
Yeah, me neither. That's where I am.
I'm only one bear claw away though from refilling that prescription.
If this week the theme is with the Scoobies finding their group or becoming a team and finding your place, do you guys have a story about that? Whether it's grade school, high school, anything like whatever, just finding your posse, your team, your place, your group.
I did have a group. Here's the thing. I got grandfathered in to my brother's friends because we went to the same high school. I really had like a group of people, but I really only deal with one person, and they're like my emissary to other people.
I always kind of bounced around between, I always had a lot of friends, and I always bounced around between groups. I had my neighbors who I grew up with, and we were always kind of hung around in their basement, and I had the friends I met in high school. It wasn't until after I was out of high school that actually my brother, Rob, he bought a Mustang and he would drive it all over the place. And there was friends that I made in high school who were car enthusiast guys, and they saw me one day and they happened to be like, hey, Chris, we saw your brother bought a Mustang. Tell him to come by. There was a coffee shop down the street from me that everyone used to hang around at. They used to go there every night. They'd be there with the cars. They'd be talking cars and just hanging out, drinking coffee, whatnot. They said, tell your brother to swing by one night. So I told him, I said, Rob, go, John and Joe and all those guys want to say hello. And they were like, we see him driving past the coffee shop, but he never stops. They're like, and I recognize him because he looks just like you. So tell him to stop next time. So he stopped. And then like a couple days later, he was going there fairly often. He was like, those guys are pretty cool. You should come stop by one night. So I said, I hung around with them in high school, but I palled around with a bunch of different groups of people. But then I went there one night and stayed, and then I literally never left. Like one of the guys who I hung around there is one of my best friends. I officiated him and his wife's wedding last year.
Oh.
And yeah, there was a real good group of guys. But it was like my brother buying a Mustang and reintroducing me to friends that I had in high school was really what set me up with the guys who I still pal around with.
For me, it was when I started dancing. I was a professional ballerina before becoming an actress. And for the part of my time that I grew up in Southern California, it was different when I moved to England. Very much the blonde cheerleader or Barbie kind of look was coveted. And when I went to dance class for the first time, I not only loved moving, but I was physically the sort of ideal in terms of being slender and fair-skinned and ethereal looking and all that stuff. And so for me, I was like, this is great. Everyone's very excited to see me. And I'm sort of in a milieu that makes sense for who I am and what is more interesting to me, and just it was a fit. And it kind of was this like a puzzle piece, kind of going, oh, this world I understand, and I also am. It was desirable, and all of the things that I thought were potential shortcomings, or not being busty, or I was like, oh, thank God you're not busty, like all these things, because it's much, much better for being a ballerina. So it was, for me, that was the thing where I felt like, oh, my identity, like sort of who I was, made sense in that group. What is the line from the episode that you would get as a tattoo?
It's an exchange, and it's top 5 favorite lines of the entire series.
I need to sit down.
You are sitting down.
Oh, good for me.
I love that line so much.
That's funny. I had it as one, how I have all these runner-ups, and that was one of my runner-ups because it's just so funny. The whole timing of it, the way that it's done.
So well executed.
Oh, good for me. Yeah, that's great.
And your line is...
Mine is
the Earth is doomed.
Yeah.
It's just, that's my favorite.
I love a good button.
I was picking between a few. Runner-ups were when Xander says, I don't like vampires. I'm going to take a stand and say they're not good.
Yeah.
That's a good line.
I like that line. And I think that Joyce's line to Buffy, if you don't go out, it will be the end of the world, is so perfect. But I think that the one I would get tattooed is Buffy when she says,
well, we averted the apocalypse. Give us points for that.
That's great.
Yeah, that's a great one.
I love how she sells, this is old hat to her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's been through it.
I also like when Xander says vampire.
Slayage,
It's a good way of coining that.
It's very 1997.
Yeah.
Xander's line, when she's talking about she had to decapitate a vampire with an X-Acto knife, and he's just like, oh, am I freaking out? It's like, no, that's actually oddly comforting.
That line made us, when we were rewatching it, laugh out loud. And it isn't like we haven't heard it.
Yeah.
It's just the timing of it and the quippiness of it. It's great.
I was going to say, my runner-up is Luke's line when he's on the stage.
Ladies and gentlemen, there is no cause for alarm. Actually, there is cause for alarm. It just won't do any good.
It's just such a great...
Brian Thompson, anytime you handed him some comedy material.
Yeah, he has good timing.
Well, he's funny with the whole when he thinks the sun is going into him and it's not, and then he realizes it's not, and he's been set up.
9 hours.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this bash of the brains, this mangling of the minds, as we try to find the Uber-Buffy-Fan among you. The Battle of the Uber-Buffy-Fans, the trivia contest of champions. I'm joined as always by Chris Feinstein.
Right you are, Frank, and I'm just excited to be here.
If you want to be considered as a contender to step into the ring, a metaphorical ring, of course, the ring being appearing on the Slaying It podcast, and see who could answer more questions that are so devious that you think they were written by the first or Drusilla. If you want to be considered as a contender, write us at slayingitpodcast@gmail.com for your chance to be the Slayerweight champion of the Hellmouth.
Please include your name, where you're based out of, and what you weigh in with number of Buffy watch-throughs. And everybody, let's get ready to Buffy!
And now for something completely
At the time, I was watching Doctor Who a lot, and I'm in the city, around Times Square, around Broadway, and I'm walking, and down the street, I notice Arthur Darvill, who played Rory on the show. And I'm not a person that goes up to, I don't bother people. Like, I worked in production. My whole thing is, like, don't bother talent. Like, leave the talent alone. That's ingrained in me. But I wanted to say something to him, like, just to let him know I'm a fan as we're walking past. And I'm like, I have like 10 seconds to, like, really think about what I'm going to say. We get up to each other, and I just go, Rory. And he kind of looked like, did that guy say something to me? And I chickened out at yelling Rory at the last second. So it was just really uncomfortable. And it was just like, oh, okay, I'm just going to, like, hopefully he didn't notice. He noticed. He just says, is that guy trying to talk to me?
Oh, that's so funny.
I didn't want to, again, it was just like, I don't want to blow up a spot. Like, I just got, like, in my head, I'm like, I just wanted to say, hey, that was it. I just wanted to say, Rory, hey, and then keep walking.
And mid-name, you just sort of ran out of...
the second syllable just tumbled out of my mouth. Rory. And he just looked. It's like, maybe that guy was coughing. He didn't know what happened. And it was just like, that was it.
Deb has to tell a funny story.
So my friend was at Gallifrey 1, and Peter Davison was the doctor that was headlining.
Okay.
And my friend was dressed up as Tom Baker, and he was leaving. And so Peter Davison is leaving, and he just has like carry-on luggage, and he's walking out of the convention. And my friend goes to him, my friend dressed up as Tom Baker goes, oh, thanks very much for coming. And Peter Davison looks at him and goes, whatever, Tom Baker boy.
Ah, nice.
The ultimate put down.
That's not very friendly.
I did a show one night with Gilbert Godfrey, and the most unassuming man on the planet. The guy is shot out of a cannon when he's on stage, but off stage, just the sweetest, just soft-spoken guy. And I followed this guy forever. So I was kind of a little timid to
Awestruck?
go up to him. Yeah, and I didn't want to bother him or anything, just to say hello and this, that, and the other thing. But after the show, shook his hand, thanks for everything. And it was literally, you want to help me sell merch? And it was like, oh, okay, just stand behind the table here. And just, if anyone, just, I guess I'm going to help you sell all your merchandise after the show in the lobby with you and your wife. And yeah, that was fun.
That's weird.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was very, because I was getting ready. It's time for me I have no merch to sell. I was a glorified open, I was a glorified open micer at the time, really. And he said, yeah, no, you're gonna stay here with me and we're gonna sell merch together. And then at the end of the night, it's just, all right, goodbye. And that was it. Oh, okay. And the club owner was like, hey, yeah, he does that. It was very nice, but it was just a very strange interaction.
So Guillermo del Toro asked me to introduce him for the Crimson Peak premiere in Los Angeles. And it was at the Man's Chinese Theater. And I was excited. I thought that would be great. And then actually later, by the way, we introduced Guillermo to Anne Rice because Guillermo thought that the movie wasn't being marketed right. And he thought it was being marketed sort of like a horror movie, but it was more of a Jane Eyre-esque romance. And he thought...
Gothic romance, yeah.
Yeah, Gothic romance. So we introduced them because the very steampunk and all that kind of stuff. So we put them together. But for this event, and also Guillermo later mentored us on our film. So I saw him backstage and we were talking and he was telling me how he had color corrected the movie. I think something like 14 different passes of color correction. He wanted to get it exactly right. And we were talking all about this. As we're talking, a number of times he opens his arms wide. It's hard to tell the story again because I'm off camera, but I'm doing the gesture, but he opens his arms wide. And I'm like, oh, it's so nice. And I hug him because we hadn't seen each other in a while. And I hug him and then we keep talking. And then a while later, he opens his arms wide and I'm like, oh, and I hug him again. And I'm like, oh, Guillermo's always so warm. This is lovely. And we're chatting. And he opens his arms wide again. And I'm like, oh, hug him again.
Oh, no.
And this goes on a number of times. I'd say maybe 6 times. And he opens his arms really wide. And I start to go in to hug him. And he goes, that's really nice. But I am just trying to gesture for you to go this way. And he was basically showing me the entrance to the stage where we had to go out. And I had apparently been like, oh my God.
Do you realize how awkward it was for him to have to say that to you?
And I just started laughing and then he started laughing and it was fine, but it was completely embarrassing. I was like, oh my God, I think I just hugged the man like 6 extra times and he was just trying to gesture for me to get on stage.
By the 3rd time, he's like, I don't know what to do here.
Juliet just keeps hugging me. What is this?
It's getting weird.
I'm like, I'm so happy to see me. This is just amazing.
Whoa.
Oh, that's so great.
And if he didn't tell you, you'd just be like, Guillermo del Toro really is a big hugger. Did you know that?
I think there would have been a point. I would have been like, what's going on? You can't want this many hugs.
Somebody had to end this. And he had to be the...
Somebody had to end this.
It did. We were late.
Oh, it's so funny.
It's like, how do you know how to finish an episode? Oh, you'll know.
Maybe we all need to go to Daddy-O's and get some refreshments. Daddy-O's. Daddy-O. Daddy-O has the answer for you. Daddy-O. 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 Every kind of food you ever want. Daddy-O. 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 Daddy-O.
Come to Daddy.
We now welcome our audience to enjoy this recently unearthed missing scene from the episode.
Run! Yes, run! It's not safe for us! Hey, buddy! Yeah, you! Don't go in the bronze! There's a slayer in there!
Oh, don't worry about him. That's just what he does.
What?
He lurks.
Oh, wait, is that Angel?
Yes, didn't you know? Back in the day, He was called Angelus the Lurker.
He was?
Righto. Others called him Liam the Lurker. I say we get a move on. Just leave him be. Leave him to do his lurking thing. See you around being stealthy, Angel.
Run! If you're enjoying Slaying It, leave us a review on Apple, Spotify, your podcast medium of choice, especially on Spotify. On Spotify, you can leave comments on episodes particular. So
which I
let
love.
us know, which is fantastic. And it's the easiest way for you guys to communicate with us.
Oh, hit us up also on our Twitter. Do we have that yet?
We don't have that yet, but we're going to have that by the time it's in.
Yeah. So
Slaying It Podcast on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, and
YouTube.
YouTube. Oh, yes, YouTube.
Sorry for yelling YouTube.
No, that's your thank you.
See you next week when we'll do it again. Do it again. And most importantly, until next time, go out and slay it.